Hey, this is the Big Hardcore Gamer, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing Resident Evil Requiem, which I played on PC through Steam. This review doesn't contain any story spoilers, and most footage will be from early on in the game. However, I will need to talk about some game mechanics, and this will involve me needing to talk about Leon's Raccoon City section and show some examples. The only big enemies you'll see in this video have already been shown in the trailers, and I won't be showing any surprise bosses and monsters from later on in the game, and trust me when I say this, there are definitely some surprises. Please watch until the end, leave it a like and share it out. Right, let's get into it. Resident Evil Requiem is the ninth mainline game in the series. You begin the game playing as Grace Ashcroft, an FBI intelligence analyst working at a desk who gets sent to the Renwood Hotel to investigate some murders. Now, before I go any further, I just want to point out just how much Grace's boss must hate her, because how's he going to send this timid agent with no field experience to investigate murders in a spooky hotel with no backup? Report this man to HR immediately. But anyway, things go very bad in that hotel, and it's the beginning of a terrifying night dealing with zombies and other monsters, and the game's antagonist, Victor Gideon. You also play as Leon Kennedy, who is investigating Gideon for reasons that I won't go into. If you spotted it in the trailers that gave away way too much, you've probably figured it out. But if not, like I said, no spoilers. Over the years, there have been two main playstyles for Resident Evil games. There's the tense survival horror with games like 2 and 7, and the action horror with games like 4 and 5. Village kinda tried to blend them together, but really just felt like a first person Resident Evil 4. In Requiem, they've successfully managed to combine both games into one by having you play as two protagonists, representing the different playstyles. So first, let's talk about Grace. Grace's sections are for the tense survival horror experience. Firstly, I'd like to say how much of an amazing job Angela Santalbano did with her performance as Grace Ashcroft. Grace may be the most relatable character I've seen in the Resident Evil franchise so far, and just by her reactions to everything that takes place during the game. We've played as cops and elite special forces throughout previous games that handled these monsters like it was just another Tuesday. Even in Resident Evil 7 and 8, we played as an average everyday civilian that adapted to everything really quickly. But with Grace, it was different. That girl was actually terrified, just like any of us would be in a situation. She constantly stutters, and even when talking with people that will help her, and she has panic attacks. And there's the heavy breathing when scared, and the cursing and panicking when running away from these monsters. It's definitely how we would all react in this situation. As the game progresses, Grace does become more and more capable, but they kept an element of her being afraid throughout the game, even when you get to the last area and she's introduced to some new monsters to deal with. There's one particular moment in the game where Grace has to face her fears and go deeper into the building where she's trapped in order to help another character. And they did a great job of showing just how scared shitless she was, but at the same time she knew that going deeper was the right thing to do. And their weapons are limited to handguns and knives, and the blood injector, which I'll talk about in a bit. Regular zombies take a lot of bullets to kill on standard difficulty, so her sections required, a bit of stealth, deciding when it was best time to sneak past them, and what tactics were needed when it was time to shoot. After getting a few edge shots on a zombie, it would give you a melee prompt, allowing Grace to push them over. This will knock them into other zombies, if they were in groups, and, knock them back. Or just make the zombie fall on the ground so you can line up the finishing headshot much easier. Knives are good for Grace to get out of sticky situations. If Grace has any knives when she's grabbed by a zombie, she can stab them to get out of it. And, the knife remains in the zombie's head until you kill them, and then you can retrieve it afterwards, as long as it's not broken. I also found myself slashing some zombies when I wanted to save ammo. What I did find disappointing was that you can't stealth kill zombies with the knife, but Grace does have an item to allow her to brutally one-hit kill zombies, and that's the blood injector. This is basically the injectors from the first Blade movie. When it mixes with the infected blood, it makes the zombies explode. I always try to keep one or two of these in my inventory for dealing with the tougher enemies, or to take out a zombie quickly when low on ammo. One thing about Grace's section is it gives you the illusion of not having enough ammo to deal with the zombies, but in reality there's more than enough ammo if you're smart with how you use it. So there's really a focus on resource management with her. You can find ammo in most vases, and when crafting is introduced, you're able to craft ammo and injectors. What is limited is Grace's inventory space. Like I said before, they don't want you carrying around a lot of weapons and ammo like Leon. Instead, they want you thinking about what items you're going to need to deal with the current situation. Plus, quest items also take up space. Are you going to carry those knives so that you can break free if you're grabbed by a zombie? Or will you take a bite so that you can carry more ammo and healing items? These are choices I was faced with a lot in the early game, which made finding additional storage just as essential as finding ammo. You can play in either first person or third person views for both Grace and Leon. You can change this in the settings, but the default for Grace is first person and third person for Leon. I had originally planned to play through the entire game in third person, but after playing 7 recently, I decided to keep it, at the default settings for most of the game. Because I planned on making a review video, I did switch perspectives a few times to see what the difference was, but I mostly stuck to the default settings. Playing as Grace in first person really immerses you in the horror, especially when you meet the girl for the first time, which is a stalker monster for Grace in this game. That shit is terrifying up close. Playing in first person definitely increases the tension because every monster and every jump scare is literally in your face. Because I played on PC with a keyboard and mouse, I really didn't have any problems controlling Grace in first person. What I noticed when I switched to third person is that it's not just a perspective change, but Capcom actually added some extra details for the different perspectives. When aiming next to a wall corner in first person, Grace will stay in cover and aim around the corner. This is the same when playing as Leon in first person. When she's running early in the game in third person, they gave her that Aura Girl stumble, which I found really funny the first time I saw it. But then switching back to first person, the stumble was completely gone. This was the first time I noticed that they put in little differences for the two perspectives, and decided to switch back to the third person again later in the game to see, what the differences were again. So later on, in a very tense section of the game that had me stressed out until I completed it, I switched back to third person. By this point, Grace had really seen some shit. And because, I was controlling her, she'd wiped out a lot of zombies, including a couple that I think were supposed to be left for Leon. She'd also been juicing up because just like in Resident Evil 7, you find steroids to improve your health. When I switched back to third person at this point, the Aura Girl stumble was completely gone. I'm not sure if this is due to upgrades or just because it was at a later part of the story and we were witnessing a character development, but I loved that they changed little details like this. Plus, if I was playing through the entire game in third person and I had to deal with that stumbling all the time, it would have gotten pretty annoying real fast. Another little detail I noticed was that when reloading a gun in a dark area, she'll hold a torch in between her shoulder and her neck to free her left hand to reload. This was an attention to detail that I really wasn't expecting, and I noticed that Leon does the same in third person. When I saw the first few videos for Requiem gameplay and they were just showing off Grace dealing with a stalker enemy, I wasn't really sure if I'd be able to handle this game. And I really just got interested when I found out that Leon would be in the game and, there would be action portions. But after playing it, I really liked Grace's sections of the game. Yes, they were stressful, but I got training recently by playing Resident Evil 7, so I handled it, much better than I expected. I've been playing these kind of games for so long that some things have become really predictable, and there were definitely moments during my playthrough that I was predicting what was going to happen. But they also did a good job in some areas of letting me think that Grace was in a safe space and then instantly putting her in danger and causing me to panic. So now it's time for Leon. Throughout this franchise, we've seen different versions of Leon. We've seen rookie RPD cop Leon in Resident Evil 2, we've seen government agent Leon in Resident Evil 4, and now we have a version of Leon that really reminds me of another popular character. Yes, this version of Leon definitely reminds me of John Wick. So all the memes about the different gameplay portions are actually pretty spot on. And I don't mean that Leon is suddenly doing gun fu. I'm talking about the tactical and brutal precision of the combat. The multi-distance stances that they've given him, depending on the distance of the enemy. It will aim from the hip for close distance sometimes, and slightly extend for mid-range, and fully aim if they're further away. The reload animations are similar to some that I've seen in John Wick films. They've definitely taken some inspiration when designing this version of him. His parrying is on another level. If you thought that Leon parrying the chainsaw with a combat knife in 4 was crazy, you ain't seen shit until you've played this game. You just need to have one rule when it comes to parrying with Leon. If it looks ridiculous and that nobody could possibly parry it, give it a try, because you probably can parry it. Leon's parry is so OP in this game that it's basically his superpower. Whenever you switch to a Leon portion of the game, the whole tone and atmosphere changes because you're now playing an action horror game instead of a survival horror game. The music changes, most of the zombies drop ammo and other items when you kill them because you're doing a lot of shooting and they don't want you to run out of ammo really quickly. There's also more zombies for you to shoot in the later Leon sections and less opportunity for stealth. His method of unlocking new weapons and upgrades is also much more fun. For Grace, you have to search for antique coins, just like you did in Resident Evil 7, and use them in the vending machines to unlock certain items. For Leon, you'll get points for every zombie you kill in the later sections of the game, and these points can be used to buy new weapons and items, and can even be used to upgrade your weapons. Nick Apostolides, sorry if I butchered that name, did a great performance as Leon, and those cheesy one-liners really did make me laugh a lot, a lot more than I thought they would. Now it's time to talk about the other stars of the game, the zombies. These were the most interesting zombies I've seen in the franchise. Well, the zombies in the care center were anyway. This is because they thought they were still alive and would continue doing their job. There's a maid, that's cleaning up blood around the area, a chef that's still out at work in the kitchen, an opera singer, and a few more. Now, imagine if you died and came back to life as a zombie and still had to continue your 9 to 5. I know that I would definitely be pissed. I've never seen zombies like these in any other game, and you can use their routines as a way to get around them, around some of them. For example, if you kill a zombie, the maid will go and clean up the blood. You can switch on the lights near a certain zombie and you'll walk over to turn it off, allowing you to sneak past him. Unfortunately, these zombies are only in the care center, and we do get more traditional zombies later on, but this is something that I think they need to experiment with more in future games. I played on PC through Steam on a capable PC, but even I was amazed by just how well optimized this game was. I played at 1440p on ICE settings with DLSS enabled on quality settings, and ray tracing is it and miss on my PC. I'll always switch it on and when I start a new game, but then switch it off if it kills my frame rate. I switched ray tracing on and was still getting between 85 to 144 FPS depending on what was happening on screen. The game was running smooth as silk. And what was even more impressive was the smooth transition from gameplay to cutscenes. There were some moments where the transition from cutscenes to gameplay and then back to cutscene, it wasn't even noticeable unless you were playing in a different perspective. This RE engine really is special. Then there's the lighting. When going through dark sections, it's pretty much pitch black, which makes any light source really stand out. This definitely adds to the tension. When going through a closed off section of the care center early on in the game with no weapons, the first bit of light in the dark corridor I could see was, a street light shining through a window, and then a corridor that was lit up by a couple of red LEDs that, it made me really nervous to walk through. Switching on the light in some areas made the light flicker when coming on, and one light kept flickering, which just added to the tension. When I found a lighter, it was lighting up a small area around Grace, and if you look closely, you could see, a subtle flicker. The lighting was done really well, and also this was the bloodiest game I've played in the series. Whether playing as Leon or Grace, killing inflicted can be extremely messy and will leave the environment covered in blood. This is definitely the goriest Resident Evil, and I had trouble with some of my YouTube shorts because I kept being told that they weren't suitable for all advisors because of just how brutal they were. As you should have realized by now, I really did love this game. But as always, I have to talk about some negatives, which is actually difficult because there really wasn't many. Let's start with the obvious one that most people who've played this will probably agree with. Early Leon sections are too short. Now, there is a massive Leon section later on in the game that took me 3 or 4 videos to cover, during my playthrough, and that basically made up for it. And that section adds some fun boss fights and great surprises. But anyone who bought this game for another Leon adventure may be disappointed early on, because its early sections only last like 5 minutes or so each time. Also, there are charms in the game for both Leon and Grace, which can give them improvements such as increased firepower on weapons for Leon, or increased knife durability for Grace. This is great, but I didn't like how the charms take up inventory space for Grace, but you can attach them to weapons for Leon. I would have preferred if Grace had a similar way of carrying charms, because like I said earlier, her space was very limited. The final criticism is one that I can't actually talk about here because it's a spoiler for the final boss section of the game. All I can say is that although the final boss was decent, there was definitely a missed opportunity with this one. When you play it, you'll probably know exactly what I mean. So now it's time for the verdict. I stopped using numbered scores on this channel 1 or 2 years ago because I found that people focus too much on the numbers and therefore miss out on, some good games if it doesn't get the number that they were expecting. So the grading system I use on this channel is a little bit different. It starts off with Did Not Finish, which is a game that I put in a lot of time, but it wasn't good enough. It was so bad that I just couldn't finish it. Then it goes up to Bad, Average, Good, and Must Play. I'm pleased to be able to say that Resident Evil Requiem is a must-play title. It's a perfect blend of tense survival horror and over-the-top action with some great set pieces, great performances from both voice actors for Grace and Leon, and I'd be surprised if Angela Saltalbano doesn't get a nomination at the Game Awards this year. It has an interesting and well paced story that knows when to use nostalgia for the Resident Evil veterans who have been playing since day one. The game was well optimized for on PC. Listen, just go and play this game if you haven't already. Right, so that's the first review of 2026 completed. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave it a like and also click on the hype button and also share it out. These reviews take a long time to make, which is why I don't do a lot of them. So share it out and get some more views on it, please. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and check out some other content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.